welcome to our lesson for today. Okay, so last time we talked about how Doeg, who had heard that when David came to the temple and Ahimelech had given him the sword of Goliath, and then he had given him bread.
Yeah.
So when King Saul was asking about information on David, Doeg told King Saul about this, and King Saul got very angry and upset, and then he said that all of the priests must die. But none of his soldiers wanted to kill the priests, but Doeg said he would kill the priests. So he went and he killed 85 priests when they were still in their garments. And then he went to Nob, where the priests' families lived, and he killed all of them. He killed the men, the women, the children, the babies, the cattle, the donkeys, the sheep, the goats, everything
that belonged to the priest Doeg killed.
Yes.
But there was one man that was able to escape,
and his name was Abiathar.
Yes, so Abiathar went to where David was hiding, and he told David all that had happened, and David was very sad and very ashamed, and he promised to take care of Abiathar, and he told Abiathar to stay there with them. So now David and his men were still in hiding, so they were still running around and hiding from Saul.
Because when they would run here, Saul would find them. And then they would run here, and Saul would find them.
Everywhere they went, Saul was able to find them because there was always someone who would tell Saul where David was hiding.
Yes. So there's this one time that King Saul and his army had surrounded David and his men, and they were ready to attack.
Yes. But there was a certain message to King Saul that the Philistines were raiding Israel again.
So now Saul had to take his army and go and fight the Philistines instead of fighting David.
And that is how David and his men were able to be saved on that day.
Yes, and they were able to escape. And that place where they were at became known as the Rock of Escape, because David and his men were able to escape.
So now David and his men went away and went in hiding in the hills.
Yes, they went to the hillside. So here in the hillside, there were many caves where David and his men could go in and they could hide. And they had fresh water from a spring that was coming from a ravine. So they had water and they had many hiding places. And another good thing about being in the hillside was that King Saul and his fully armed army, they couldn't move up and down the hills
as easy as David and his men could, because David's men were not really armed, so they were light. It was easy for them to move up and down the hills. But Saul and his men were heavy with all this armor and all their weapons, so it was hard for them to move up and down the hills.
Yes. So one time, David and his men were hiding in the back of one of the caves, and then they had King Saul and his men coming closer and closer. And then King Saul needed to go to the toilet. So he stepped into the cave where David and
his men were hiding. So now, because of the bright sunlight that was shining like right at the front of the cave, King Saul and his men were not able to see David and his men hiding behind the cave. So King Saul,
even though he was at the entrance, he couldn't see David.
He could not see, but David and his men could see King Saul.
So then David's men started telling David, kill him, go and kill him. But David said, no, I will not kill the king. He is the Lord's anointed one. So instead of killing him, he went up close to King Saul, and then he cut a piece of his long robe. And then now he went back to where his men were. Then King Saul left the cave. And when King Saul had left the cave, David came out and called after him, Your Majesty, look! And when he said look, he was showing King Saul the piece of his robe that he had cut off.
And so David told King Saul, you have to believe that I do not want to harm you. I do not want to kill you.
And this time David had even come and bowed down in front of King Saul. And King Saul was very shocked. And then David is here telling him, you have to believe
I do not want to kill you. Look. And he showed him the piece of cloth, and he said, I could have killed you
when the Lord
had placed you at my mercy, but I did not kill you.
I decided not to kill you. So you have to believe that I do not mean you any harm. And then King Saul was sad and he felt so ashamed and he even started to cry. And then he told David truly you are a better man than I
am.
am.
I have wronged you.
I have wronged you, and you have repaid good for evil. And then King Saul said, you are going to be the next king of Israel.
Yes.
And when you become king, you have to promise that you are going to be kind to my family.
Yes, and so David took an oath and he promised to show kindness to King Saul's family when he became king.
Yes.
So King Saul went away very sad, and David went back into hiding. But he knew King Saul's feeling for him were not really changed.
Even though he said this, he someday, very soon, King Saul is going to come back and start trying to attack me again. And true to his word, it happened. King Saul came and started trying to find him again. So this time, David sent spies just to make sure that King Saul was actually after him again. And if for sure, these spies came back and they said, He's after you. And so what David did, he decided to go to where Saul and his men were camping.
Yes.
And so David took one of his men, Abishai, who volunteered to go with him. And so they went down to where King Saul was camping. And when they got there, King Saul was asleep. And then the soldiers were all around him, and they formed a ring around him. So he was in the middle, and they were all asleep. And then there was King Saul's spear that next to his head, and there was a jug right there. Yes. And then Abishai told David, kill him. But David said, no, I will not kill the king. He is the Lord's anointed one. So instead of killing him, he took King Saul's spear and the jug, and then they left. And he went away with them. And so the next morning, David called out from across the hill, and he said, and he called out to King Saul, and King Saul was able to recognize David's voice. Yes. And then when he called out to him, he said, why are you still trying to kill me? And then he said, here, look, I had another chance to kill you. And he showed him the spear and the jug, and he said, I had another chance to kill you, but I decided not to kill you again. Yes. And then King Saul blessed David, and he said, for sure, you are going to be king, and you are going to do great and heroic deeds, and you're going to be successful. And so King Saul went home, and David went away. So from this we learn, children, that David recognized that King Saul had been anointed by God, and he had been chosen as king. And so even when he was placed, even when he was in a position to kill King Saul, he decided not to, because it was not in his place to punish Saul for what he was doing. Yes, so even because he understood that God had anointed him. Yes, because he knew God had anointed Saul. So even if Saul was doing wrong things, it was not in David's place to punish him or to kill him. Yes, and the same way that this sometimes happens when you have a leader or someone who's in charge that God has chosen, and they're not doing very good, they're not being very good to you, they're being bad people. It is not in your place to try and harm them or to even be jealous of them or even to try to remove them, because you have to understand God put them there, meaning that it is only God who can decide what to do with them, and it is not your place to do that. Yes, so now we are going to stand up and sing our song. So let's all stand up and sing this song. Okay, kids, so it's time for us to sing our song. And we've just talked about how every time David would run somewhere, King Saul would come and find him, and God was able to protect David. Even as David was hiding, God protected him from King Saul. And how David decided not to kill King Saul, even if he had the opportunity to, because King Saul was the Lord's anointed one. So now we're gonna sing a song. So everybody stand up and help us sing this song, because you know this song. You've had this song. So you have to help us sing it. Okay. I'm gonna hide right under the blood. I'm gonna hide right under the blood. I'm gonna hide right under the blood, where the devil can do me no harm. I'm gonna hide right under the blood. I'm gonna hide right under the blood. I'm gonna hide right under the blood, where the devil can do me no harm. No harm, no harm, no harm. No harm, no harm, no harm. No harm, no harm, no harm, where the devil can do me no harm. I'm gonna hide right under the blood. I'm gonna hide right under the blood. Okay, kids, so it's time for us to do our craft. Now, we've just talked about how when David ran and hid in one place, King Saul came and found him. And when he ran and hid in another place, King Saul came and found him. And when he found him in a cave, David had the opportunity to kill King Saul, but he decided he was not going to kill King Saul. He was not going to kill the Lord's anointed. And this happened at the entrance of the cave. So that is what we're making as our craft. So what we have is we have pink manila paper here, and we took our brown color. We took brown and a darker brown and maybe a maroonish color, and then something like a yellowish color, and we colored the whole place. We colored our entire cave, made it brown, and added these other colors so it can look interesting and creative, but we colored our whole cave. Then what we did next is we took our pencil and we created the rocks. Because in a cave, it's not just the wall of the cave, but it's also rocks. So we needed to make it look not smooth. So we came and we created our rocks. So what we did is we just drew lines that curved or that had sharp points at one point, and we did that all over. So now we had a cave wall. So now we've created the wall of the cave where David and his men were all hiding. So just make sure you can see all of your lines so it looks like an actual cave. I'm just going to go over all of these lines again. There we go. And this is my entire cave. So after we've created something that looks like a cave and a cave wall, what we need to do is we need to have an entrance.
Yeah.
So we took another piece of manila paper. This one was yellow. Then we took it and we still colored it brown because the entrance of the cave would still have been brown. So we colored it brown, and this is our cave entrance. So at our cave entrance, we're going to put it somewhere down here at the bottom. Then we're going to staple it. So now we have a cave and we have a cave entrance. Next thing we need to do is we need to have David. Now David, you need to draw a small person. So take a different colored manila paper and draw a small person. So start with the head and then give him a body. So hand on this side and hand on this side, and then we give him his legs. So just draw a simple person. If you want to draw a very interesting person, you can still draw an interesting person, but me, I've drawn a simple person. I'm giving my person hair, then I draw the eyes and a mouth. There. Now I have my small tiny David. So we need to cut out our tiny David. And remember, David was inside the cave, hiding with his men. Then King Saul came in, but he wasn't able to see them. And then what David did is he cut off a piece of King Saul's robe because he decided he was not going to kill King Saul. So to prove that he had no intention of killing King Saul, he cut off a piece of his robe. And that is why now he decided, how King Saul believed that yes, David could have killed me, but he decided not to.
Yes, because King Saul did not even feel David cutting that piece of rope from
Yes, exactly. He didn't even know that David had cut it. So after you've cut out your small David, oh no, my David's hand got torn. It's okay, I'll staple my hand back. So after you've cut out your small David, make sure you're careful so that it doesn't get torn like my David. Now you need to put David at the entrance of the cave, because after David cut off King Saul's robe, he was at the entrance and he called out to King Saul.
Yeah.
So make sure you put David at the entrance of the cave. Next thing we need is we need a robe. Remember, he cut a piece of King Saul's robe. So now we have a piece of cloth here that I'm going to make small so that it can fit in David's hand over here. So now my tiny David has a piece of King Saul's robe. There. So he has a piece of King Saul's robe. But so that we can be able to remember what all of this means to us, we need to write it down. So on the wall of the cave, our rocks will write down what is happening. So on the first one you write, David was inside the cave. David was inside
the cave.
Then on another rock you write, David would never hurt the Lord's anointed. And the Lord's anointed in this case is King Saul. So even though his men told him that he should kill King Saul, he would never hurt the Lord's anointed.
Yes.
And then after writing David would never hurt the Lord's anointed in one, we're going to write David spares King Saul's life. So in the next one you write David spares King Saul's life. David spares King Saul's life. So after writing David spares King Saul's life, the next thing we're going to write is David cut off the edge of King Saul's robe. So you can write it on any part of the cave wall. So I'm going to write mine here. David cut off the edge of King Saul's robe. Okay, of King Saul's robe. And then next thing we need to write is David had 600 men, but King Saul had 3,000. So David had 600 men, but King Saul had 3,000. Then the most important thing that we need to write is the scripture. Where in the Bible can we find this story? And that is 1 Samuel chapter 24. Yes, 24. Verse 1 to 22.
All the way to 22.
1 to 22. So now we have David in the cave holding a piece of King Saul's robe.
Yeah.
And we can say we find this story in 1 Samuel chapter 24 verse 1 to 22. Yeah. And we have the story around our cave wall.
Around the cave wall.
Yes.
Yes. So if you go through the cave walls, you can be able to tell the story, what went on inside the cave and around the cave. Yes. So that's our story today, and that's our lesson today. Until next time, bye.